TVR's new Tuscan S. We get the lowdown on new licence plates and turning heads for the Turner Prize. Car art like you've never seen it before.
Got a tail, hold on.
This summer, TVR has been parading its Tuscan in a hot Hollywood movie. Driven by a very powerful, super cool cookie with wads of wedge, it's clear what sort of people the car is aimed at. Powerful. Dynamic.
You gotta die.
With strange bits of facial hair. But now there's a Tuscan for people who are even more powerful, more dynamic and more, you get the idea? This is the Tuscan S, the fastest and best equipped TVR in production. It looks much the same as the car on which it's based, the Tuscan Speed 6, except for those standard monster 18-inch wheels, a front splitter and a slip of a spoiler at the rear. These aerodynamic aids aren't just for show either. There's much more to this car than being a top pose machine. The Tuscan S is one of just a few that produces real downforce, as opposed to lift, which is what most other cars produce. And that scares me. Another thing that makes the S a bit scary is its 4-litre straight-six engine, which is more powerful than ever. An extra 30 brake has been found to give a total of 390 bhp, and torque is up too. But it's all highly manageable around town, which is surprising for a car with so much road presence. The clutch is reasonably light and the accelerator is smooth enough for you to trickle along in first gear. Now, three-point turns aren't its forte, but when it comes to parking, you have excellent rear visibility. But even at these low speeds, this car is one exciting machine to be in. If you do get caught up in a bit of congestion, there's plenty inside to feast your eyes on. The Blackpool boys have come up with a new trim for the S, and although it is invigorating to see a cabin unlike any other, the blend of metals is a bit Chigwell, if you know what I mean. Apart from wacky paint jobs and full leather trim, you get all the optional extras from the standard Tuscan. These include suede door inserts, a digital radio, air conditioning, colour-coded boot carpet, and of course a removable roof which can be stowed in the cavernous boot. But if performance figures are the things that ring your bell, then ding dong. Launch the S from a standstill and it'll hit 60 in 4 seconds. It doesn't take too much longer to reach its top whack of 195 miles an hour either. It is ferociously fast. And wonderfully noisy. This 5-speed box has the build and feel of a tank. And in the unlikely event that you can't hear when it's time to change gear, this dash-mounted light gives you a visual nod. Big vented disc brakes give a fade-free feel to the middle pedal, and its revised steering and suspension has improved its country road manners. For here is a Tuscan that is set up for those low-profile tyres. It doesn't bounce over bumps or tramline as much as the standard model, but that does not mean that you can sit back and relax. This is a car that demands a bit of respect. The steering is so responsive that it will turn on almost thought alone, and the rear drive chassis is only too eager to shake its tail on demand. Oof. Bring it on! At £48,800, it's a whole 10 grand more than the standard Tuscan, which at first might seem a bit expensive. Until you remember that its performance will embarrass the likes of Ferrari and Porsche. This is a piece of Blackpool that definitely rocks.
Remember the 70s? A decade when fish fingers glow. Remember the 70s? A decade when fish fingers glowed in the dark and a pint of orange squash would keep you up for 2 days.
A time when we were obsessed with being modern and sophisticated. Bugs, stylophones and rally choppers made it an exciting time to be around.
Our cars, however, were still in the dark ages. We were very good at building ropey motors with shocking reliability and hideous build quality. But for some reason, that didn't matter. It was only when British Leyland, the chief executioners of our car industry, decided to get all cutting edge that things took a turn for the worse. Enter the TR7.
Leyland had wanted a mid-engine car, but research from the US said that something simple, comfortable and cheap would be a winner. So BL engineered a straightforward mechanical package and came up with several design concepts, including the Lynx.
The Lynx was a 2+2 concept with a V8 engine, which was supposed to be a replacement for the Stag. But it wasn't until a senior manager stumbled across plans by a young designer called Harris Mann that Project Bullet was given the nod and the TR7 ball started to roll.
But this car was designed with only one thing in mind: America.
America is coming home. Triumph's bold, slashing wedge. TR7, the shape of things to come.
BL was blown away with what it thought was a revolutionary design, the wedge. Even though it looked like a cheese triangle with pop-up headlights, the company thought it had got its own mini Ferrari. Designed to look like a fashionable mid-engine sports car, even though it wasn't, they felt sure the Yanks would love it. So they launched the car there first in 1975.
The US government looked certain to ban convertibles, so the first cars to find their way across the pond were a gaggle of especially ugly ducklings. These fixed heads. They wanted you to think that this was the shape of things to come, but underneath it was a good old Triumph Dolomite. From the very start, the pressure was on.
BL, never ones to make things easy for themselves, decided to bend the old 6-cylinder engine and go for a 2-litre 4-cylinder effort worth 105 brake horsepower. This car may have pop-up headlights, but use them in a stiff wind and you'd almost be going backwards.
This 2-litre engine can manage a top speed of 112 miles an hour and get from 0 to 60 in 9.6 seconds. Now that's slower than the TR6, but a whole lot quicker than the MGB. When it came out, it was praised for its handling, especially its steering. But I wouldn't get too carried away. It's getting on a bit now and, well, they're responsible for the Maxi as well, aren't they?
Initial demand was strong, but things were never easy for the 7. Shortly after its UK launch in 1976, the Liverpool factory was crippled by industrial action. Spluttering productivity and badly built cars eventually gave way to complete shutdown for nearly a year.
In 1978, BL moved the whole operation to Coventry. A year later, the car was relaunched and the quality had improved. But by then, the damage had been done. All other plans for Project Bullet were shelved, and thanks to its early reliability problems, the TR7's image was tarnished throughout the world.
Even the new Avengers had cause to regret the day British Leyland donated a 7. Filming was constantly interrupted by breakdowns, leaving martial arts expert Purdy stranded. After just 3 episodes, the car was dropped.
In 1979, Triumph got rid of the roof and the dodgy-looking coupe was transformed into the lower, sleeker convertible. Now the 7 was a proper roadster and it looked a bit better. Buyers agreed because the drop top outsold the fixed head by 9 to 1.
But a year later, the 7 got the Rover V8 engine and the TR8 was born. UK spec gave 155 brake horsepower, delivering the kind of grunty performance the 7 lacked. It was almost a real muscle car and could have been a winner. Road and Track magazine in America called the TR8 the best new sports car of 1980. Unfortunately, very few of them made it back to this country. And in 1981, the strength of the pound against the dollar meant that Triumph were losing money on every single car sold in the US. The end result? The TR7 and 8 were cancelled. The TR8 never did go on sale in the UK, but we did get to see the mighty V8-powered TR7s in rallying. By 1980, in the hands of Tony Pond, this 300 brake horsepower monster was pretty much invincible in competition. If you pine for the decade of long summers and fluorescent orange food, then maybe the Cheese Chunk TR could be the ultimate addition to your old school tracksuit.
They finally stopped production in 1981, just as it was getting its game together. So these are the ones to go for. If the oddball looks excite you, then this is a two-seater sports car for peanuts. And there are plenty around. The 7s and 8s, the last of the TRs, were also the best-selling, which means that later, Solihull-built drop tops in mint condition are yours for 4,000 quid. Somebody at British Leyland did have the last laugh, though, because the early TR7s were exactly the shape of things to come for Britain's car industry. But the later models, as a retro rarity for pocket change, could well be worth a second look.
Here's one for you. How is this? More sophisticated than this? Well, it's simple, really. It's the way you sell them! I guess we've all been guilty of taking things a bit for granted. I mean, wander into a supermarket and what do you see? Aisle after aisle, row upon row of different beans, biscuits, cereals, washing powders. You choose whichever one you want without having to go to another shop. Fantastic!
But when you want to buy a new car, you have to run a marathon from dealership to dealership. Because as things stand, each business can only sell new cars from a single manufacturer. It's the law.
But what about the internet, you say? What happened to all those car-selling sites that sprang up about a year ago and promised so much? The buying revolution that meant that we'd never have to go to the shops ever again. Well, actually, I quite like going to the shops. Gets me out of the house. And it seems that rather a lot of you felt much the same.
You were all a bit nervous. Nervous about giving your details over the net. Nervous about the waiting for delivery. And nervous about some of the more fly-by-night operations. The result? Only a few major players have gone the distance and are starting to turn a profit.
When you're spending £20,000 or more on a car purchase, you want to make sure that when you give that money away that you're going to get a car at the end of it. So I think a lot of the sites that didn't have brands, people didn't recognise them, they were very wary of giving their money away.
But now everything's fine and everything's lovely. The future's here, and thanks to the internet, everybody will have to lower their prices to stay competitive.
Wrong. You should know things can never be that simple. Say hello to a delightful piece of European legislation called block exemption.
Block exemption means this. The block means it applies to all the vehicle firms of Western Europe, en bloc. The exemption is an exemption to some of the regulations of the Treaty of Rome, and it's the regulations that promote competition.
It's a piece of antiquated legislation that ties the manufacturer to the dealer. So the consumer only has one choice of channel in buying a car, and when the consumer goes to the dealer, he can only look at one brand of car. In almost every other industry and any other product you want to buy, you're faced with a choice of brands on the retailer shelves.
So Mr. Lancaster and his boss Sir Richard are off to Brussels to try to get something done about it.
Of course, the car industry says it all makes perfectly good sense. After all, beans is beans and cars aren't.
Cars are complex mechanical items. They're comprised of something like 15,000–20,000 bits. There is a safety requirement to ensure that they're serviced and maintained to certain standards, and there is a requirement that the dealers have in stock a guaranteed level of supplies and parts and are capable and trained to work on those particular products.
It's very difficult and more difficult to argue in favour of it in a truly free market, and the European market is getting freer and freer. On the other hand, there are some good points about it. Arguably, it's actually kept more dealers in an industry than a free-for-all would.
So, block exemption, which seems bad, is actually quite good. Confusing, isn't it?
Hold on a minute. If everyone in Europe has got block exemption, then why are we in the UK still paying more for our cars? And we are, aren't we?
There are different rates of tax between the UK and Europe. There is a difference in exchange rate between the UK and Europe, and there are different interest rates, which of course all roll up into the common factor that prices will differ as long as we have that difference in tax and currency and interest rates.
A recent EU study looking at price differences across 9 European countries has identified that 50% of the price difference is tax and 50% is manufacturer pricing.
But the bottom line is that your local dealer still isn't the cheapest place to go to buy a new car. The whole system seems bonkers.
A great example would be the Jaguar XKR, built in Coventry, shipped to, bought by us from a dealer on the continent, probably in France or Germany, brought back to a consumer who lives in Coventry, probably only a mile down the road from the factory, who will save £9,000. The UK car industry has paid the cost of shipping that car from the factory to the dealer. We've paid the cost of shipping it back, and it's still £9,000 cheaper. Now, how daft is that?
What happens next is a complete change in the system, I think. I think you will get a renewal of block exemption, but it's going to be much more liberal. It is actually going to open up the market to new players coming in. It's going to split the degree of power and undermine the degree of power that the vehicle maker has.
The reality is that you and I, walking down the street, talking to a bloke in the pub, we want to know that when we buy the car, the bloke who sold it to us is sensible, is going to be there in a few years and delivers good service.
We do need standards, but we need standards which are in the consumer's interest, not in the industry's interest.
Which means that before too long, we could be buying our cars from high street shops, which will sell you any brand you fancy.
The future's been a bit of a disappointment, really, hasn't it? I mean, you would have thought by now that the way we buy cars would be a bit more 21st century. Actually, I thought we'd all be living on the moon, eating out of tubes. And what have we got? I don't even like beans!
Still to come on Top Gear. Everything you need to know about the to come on Top Gear. Everything you need to know about the new number plates. And combining cars with the art world. But first, the Top Gear verdict.
Proton built their first car back in 1985, although it wasn't really their own because it was a rehashed Mitsubishi cast-off, and they've been producing more of the same ever since. But now they're ready for the big time, and with a little help from the Europeans, they produced their first all-new car, the Proton Impian.
The Vectra-sized Impian looks like a proper car. It's attractive and grown up at the front, a bit more generic Far East at the rear, but a good job nevertheless. There's plenty of space inside, but the styling is a terrible mishmash of plastics, and the seats are about as shapely and comfortable as a church pew. And it's a shame that the seats are so poor and that the steering wheel sits so low, because part of that European help comes courtesy of Lotus, who of course Proton own, and the Impian handles really well. The steering is very precise, and firm suspension, yet not too firm to spoil a really good ride, make the Impian a country lane delight. The 102 horsepower 1.6 litre engine still comes courtesy of Mitsubishi, and it's a match for most on the market. At 12 seconds, it's nearly 1 second quicker than the 1.6 Vectra to 60, but it is a bit buzzy if you rev it hard. Mind you, if that's a problem, there's a new range of engines on their way for future models. The basic 1.6 Impian costs £12,000 and a 5-year warranty, aircon, alloy wheels, ABS, traction control, 4 airbags, electric windows and mirrors, and a 6-speaker stereo all come as standard. Very impressive, as is 42.2 miles to the gallon. But it's not the only bargain in town. The equivalent 1.6 Skoda Octavia is £300 less, whilst the larger and much more powerful Kia Magentis is only £1,000 more. Mind you, you can't get any sort of Vectra for this sort of money. The Top Gear verdict for the Proton Impian, a promising 7 out of 10.
A big shake-up is about to happen to our number plate system. Trouble is, not many people seem to know anything about it.
I don't know. Is it new?
No idea.
No.
I don't really understand it.
I ain't got the foggiest what you're talking about.
That's the new registration.
I know it's the new number plate, but I don't know how it works. Very impressive.
Originally invented to keep track of unruly drivers and car thieves, the number plate leapt onto our bumpers in 1903. The single letter at the end of the registration moved up front in 1983, but on September the 1st, things will change again, and it's happening for two reasons. First, because we've run out of letters, and second, to crack down on those light-fingered car thieves.
Currently there's a problem with crime and number plates where people can go and buy a number plate or a pair of plates, put them on a vehicle and change its identity, and there are no records of that purchase and there is no way of actually tracking where those plates were purchased from. One of the provisions of the new standard, which is compulsory, is that you will have both the name of the supplying outlet, whether it be a garage or a motor factor, plus you will have to have their postcode on the plate as well. This then means it's very easy to trace back to the source of supply of the number plate.
Oh, right. So you won't actually know... Oh, I see, right.
An amazing 400,000 cars are stolen each year, and about 40,000 of these are given false number plates to sell to innocent buyers. But when the new scheme takes to the streets, you'll no longer be able to buy new number plates without proof that you own the vehicle. The new registration is the result of months of research by scientists and psychiatrists who have worked out a sequence of characters to be as memorable as possible. This is what they came up with, but what does it all mean?
I've no idea.
Is it the double letters?
BA? What's BA? What does BA mean?
The first two letters on the plate will show the area in which the vehicle was registered. In the case of where we are today, Birmingham, it will start with a B. In London, it will be L. And for Scotland, the registrations will start with S.
52, 53, will they go apply that or what?
Two numbers which will indicate the date in which the vehicle was registered. In the case of this September, it's 51. Next March, it will be 02, and then in September next year, it will be 52. The idea being that you can identify both the year from the last number, and then whether it's a 0 or a 50 indicates whether it was a March or September registration.
And what does the 3 A's mean?
And then finally you have 3 letters on the plates, and they are the random element. You will now have 3 random letters. But all number plates will now carry 7 digits.
Confused? You will be. And how about cherished number plates? Well, since 1989, the DVLA have earned a staggering £543 million in personalised registrations. So this little money spinner won't be going away. In fact, the new plates are throwing up some canny combinations that will be coming up for auction and are likely to fetch a heady price.
It's going to be a little bit more inventive than what the things that people currently buy. But it's a matter of trying to manipulate numbers and letters to achieve words. One thing I quite fancy buying is a Birmingham registration in 2005, which would be BO55, and then you can put anything you like behind it. Based on the level of orders we're taking at the moment, we think it's going to be a fairly good September for car sales, and we think it's probably because with the new registration people can really show they've got a new car.
So everybody wants the new registration, but do we finally understand it?
The BA is the city where it's registered. That's the year, so this September is 5-1, next February or March will be 02, and it's 5-2, and that's just random.
Exactly.
Blue tack. I've got nothing against it, but it's not that great to look at, is it? Well, that didn't stop one joker making it the basis of his entry into this year's Turner Prize. And he got nominated, which is more than can be said for the bloke whose art is based on cars. What have they missed out on? Yes, 2 years ago, custom car champion Andy Saunders showed us his X2000, a 50s-inspired futuristic fun wagon. Now, after seeing how unmade beds and photos of Concorde can win big art prizes, he decided to make his own bid for the Turner.
What I do is like everything I've ever done is a one-off. It's all sculptured. It's all out of steel. It's basically carving the thing out of steel and filler. You bleed for it. You're in pain for most of the year. You're locked away in a garage for like 9 months. It's art, and I thought I'd have a go.
To get nominated, Andy needed to have an exhibition of his work, and he found Poole Arts Centre only too happy to stage it for him.
This was in the exhibition. It's a 1961 Volvo Amazon.
What have you done to it?
I've had it 20 years, actually. I paid 180 quid for that in like 1981 or something. Made it convertible, chopped the roof. I had it on the road for like 8 years. Then it went to purple with scallops, and then this year it's been redone. It's got the 4 headlights, floating bar grille.
So have you done all this spraying and bodywork yourself?
Yeah.
Where did you learn to do all that?
Just self-taught. Just like the more projects I've done, the more eager I've got to learn something new. So
were the first projects a bit dodgy or not?
Looking back at it, I suppose they probably were, yeah.
Now, Andy, what is
this?
that?
Basically, because the exhibition was of cars and we could only get 2 in there in the first place, we had to find other stuff to fill up with. And Poole Arts Centre gave me an art director, and she saw that bonnet, which was on a scrap car that I had, and she just said that it's natural, it's beautiful, which indeed I think it is. I think it's gorgeous. How something can deplete that badly in 20 years, I don't know. You
haven't seen me, mate. So you're changing from a custom car bloke to an artist proper?
If that had won the Turner Prize, then I would have come up with some story where it had been doused in salt water every day for the last 20 years or something.
I've been very proud of that one. This looks like it's right up the street.
This was designed on a stag night, actually. I don't know where the idea come from. A Chinese puzzle with 2 rings that you can't get apart. And I just said to this art director, I said, I've come up with this idea called the Longbridge Puzzle. I said it's 2 1100 doors that you can't break away from each other. And she says, fantastic. She's a really, really good idea. So I did it. That took me like 45 minutes.
How much would I have to give you?
Depends how wedged up you are.
Well, hundreds or thousands?
Probably about a tenner, I should imagine, wouldn't you?
Have the Empress, a Ford Fairlane retractable and Andy's latest project, maybe a contender for next year's Turner Prize. It's an incredibly rare car, but it hasn't stopped him adding his own touches, like those faux chrome exhaust pipes. But my favourite bits are around the front. He's reversed the headlight units. Not very practical, is it? But look at these, chrome artillery shells. You really wouldn't mess with it, would you? 0 to 60, forget about it. I am truly convinced that this is a mobile work of art. I mean, look at this lavish gold jukebox interior and these cream and gold seats. All right, I'm getting used to the fact that it's tipping with rain, but we're not allowed any windscreen wipers because it's the Californian look. And also, if it doesn't grind, it ain't low enough. But I have to change gear with this rather saucy young lady. Quite enjoy it, really. But the main thing is, people love watching this car go past. And I reckon that makes Andy an artist. In fact, quite a successful one. But the Turner judges didn't agree, and they rejected Andy's art. They wouldn't even admit whether they had actually seen his show, but he's not too downhearted about it. And even if the Empress doesn't impress, he's got other designs up his sleeve.
I don't know, I might get an Austin 1100 and cover it with plasticine or something like that.
Next week on Top Gear, Alistair McRae and his amazing accent. The British sports car that didn't quite make it, the Marauder. And how getting into your car should be the ultimate stress buster.
And the Top Gear team test drive some of the world's most powerful cars to the limit and beyond in these Fast and Furious BBC videos.